Okay, well, welcome, Guy, to Emotionally Unavailable.
I
I
love the title
You
of your
do?
podcast. Yeah, I really do.
Thank you. Thank you. I originally what's funny is I was going to ask the gal that I did ask the girl that I'm on this staycation with. Audience, I'm on a staycation for my birthday. Um I asked her because I thought I wasn't interesting enough to have a podcast by myself. And
Mhm.
so I was like, "We should have a podcast and we should name it Emotionally Unavailable, and that'll be so funny." And then the show took on kind of a life of its own once I started it because I was like, "Wow,
Yeah,
I really am super emotionally unavailable." So I had to learn
yeah.
all about that and how to become more vulnerable and all the things.
Oh, yeah, totally. That's been my experience. I have a YouTube channel, and kind of my intent in doing it and what it turned into were really different. It mostly has to do with the relationships that I've formed and the conversations that
Yeah,
have, like, happened that I didn't plan or even know to expect or know to want or any of those kinds of things, that there's something about the enactment of relationship and conversation that can really exceed, right, what our minds can categorize, right?
for
Like
sure. And I was a little afraid to be too serious, like in quotes, too serious, because that was
Mm,
something that I kind of felt like too muchness around was I
mm,
don't enjoy small talk, like about the
mhm,
weather, like getting, that just dumb stuff that people talk when they bump into each other.
yeah,
I've never
yeah,
enjoyed that. Now I can identify how much it drains my energy. But I mean, I love a fun conversation. It doesn't
yeah,
matter what it's about. But like, I
yeah,
would prefer like real connection. And so I felt like there's been plenty of people along the way throughout my life that kind of was like, yeah, it's a little too much for me, you know? And so I was
yeah,
afraid because I got more validation when I was funny. I mean, I am funny. And I mean, even when I'm talking about serious stuff, there's times I'm funny
yeah,
about it. But I kind of felt worthier if I was just being funny and acting like shit didn't bother me. And so, like,
yeah,
I was real afraid to go deep. And it wasn't very long until I just started having really good conversations and met the right people to
yeah,
grow and evolve and heal, and
yeah,
so just more and more, I was just putting myself out there and being
yeah,
willing to just grow, you know?
yeah, yeah. What you just said about when you met the right people, right?
Mhm.
And what I'm kind of hearing you say is when I met the right people who could hear deeper aspects of me, those aspects, right, you could hear. You could hear through their hearing, and it could be
Yeah.
the depth of yourself could become really, really here, which is could be
Yeah,
really
and I think it
transforming.
too I had to get to where I felt so in alignment with who I wanted to be, that I just decided if the audience didn't come for that, that they would eventually. And so, like, I just really kinda had to quit caring about and I was glad I did this early on, but I really just had to quit caring about what people thought. Like, is this gonna resonate? What is this too much? Because once I started getting into the spiritual content, that was a
Mm,
whole different ball game, you know?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
like, I was terrified, and I used to do full-blown introductions to episodes,
mhm,
and I stopped doing that in, like, January, and I would be like, "Just have an open mind," so, like, new people who join don't get any of those warnings from me anymore, but I just, like, have to hope that, like, if you're meant to be in my energy, then you're open to hearing it and just taking what resonates and leaving what doesn't and moving on with your life. So,
yeah,
I just can't worry about any of that anymore.
yeah, yeah, totally. And it's surprising when you stop worrying about that, I would imagine you realize how much time you had spent worrying about that
Mhm.
before. And there's a
For
really
sure.
So, one of the things I've noticed is, like, relationships involve a lot of things. One of the things they don't involve is control of the other person, right?
So true.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, which was
Yeah.
the bane of my existence for a long time because I was like, "Why can't I control you? Hello?"
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So tell
Totally.
me about you. Where did you grow up?
I was born in Chicago,
Oh,
and
okay.
I basically kind of, the early part of my life until I was there till I was, like, 11 or 12.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and, and my parents were awesome a and nuts. Um, alcoholics and
Yeah.
drug addicts, and they got sober when we moved from Chicago, um,
Oh.
which was which was probably the greatest act of love that they ever really expressed for me. Um,
Um,
but I grew up in Chicago. My parents were pretty, um, in kind of the grips of addiction most of the time, and everything that came with that. My, however, I had grandparents that really showed up in a big way, especially my grandfather, um, who just basically, he's an extraordinary man. He moved to America in 1928, uh, from Germany. He ended up becoming kind of a somewhat, world-class tailor. He apprenticed with a tailor in Hanover, Germany, and then moved. Yeah,
wow.
and he started his, his dry cleaners called Hoff Cleaners. His last name was Hoffmeister, so he called it Hoff Cleaners in
Oh.
Hinsdale, Illinois, which is like a kind of upper middle class suburb of Chicago. And
Mhm.
he actually became like that little corner shop, right? Hoff Cleaners ended up becoming quite famous. Chuck Comiskey of Comiskey Park, right? He used to go there,
That's so
and
cool.
yeah, he was a man that just had a lot of wonder. Um, and he really poured himself into me, uh, in a ways in a ways that I'm still understanding had an impact on me. Um,
Mhm.
and when I moved from Chicago, because when my parents got sober, they kind of intuitively knew that they couldn't stay sober in Chicago.
Yeah.
So, we moved and a big part of that had to do with, my mom and her in her craziness at the time. We had actually taken over the family business. And they took it over in the early '80s, and right when cocaine became the thing, um, and she got really kinda nutty and didn't pay the IRS for, like, 4 or 5
Oh,
years, and everything got
no.
confiscated, and we lost all our money, and so we moved to Cottonwood, Arizona.
So
uh
wait, so the dry cleaning or the whatever Hoff got shut down?
No, we actually we had to we sold it, but the whole thing went to the government, right?
Was your grandpa devastated?
Uh, as much as he could talk about being devastated, I think he was, yeah. But
Oh, what a
it's actually
loss.
still exists. It's just not in the family
Yeah.
anymore. Yeah, yeah. In
Oh, what
fact,
a loss.
I was just emailing with, the people who own it now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so he never really talked about that? How he
he
felt
talked
about it?
he talked about it to the degree that, someone who grew up in the, 19 teens, from Germany could talk about it. Mostly he just was, felt, I think, resentful at my dad, right? Like, I think, I would say his relationship with my father was one of resentment, right? Because my
Yeah.
father, you know, h his daughter, my mom, was kind of raised as a princess in a certain sense.
Okay.
And she was supposed to go to Marquette University in, in Wisconsin to become a nurse, which is the, Marquette, I guess is like the biggest nursing school, in the world at that time. And she was kind of set. And then she met my dad, and my dad basically introduced her to psychedelics and everything. And
Okay.
then,
Yeah.
so on some level, I think my grandfather had, if anything, like like a tolerant relationship with him, but always, always resentful. Um,
Oh, your poor mom, though, I bet she carried so much shame over that stuff. And do you have siblings?
no, only child.
Okay. Only child. Okay.
Yeah.
Even harder. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, yeah, you
Yeah.
there was a lot of expectation, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, there was like a lot of disappointment. There was a lot of expectation. Yeah. And when you talked about, I mean, that was quite intuitive of you to say, like, my mom had a tremendous amount of shame. And this is in the 70s and the 80s, right? So even more so than it is today, you just didn't talk about
Right.
stuff, right?
Any of
And
it, not the
yeah.
financial loss, the fact that you've got addiction in your family. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
hear you. Okay, so you guys moved to where?
A little town called Cottonwood, Arizona.
Okay,
It's,
Cottonwood.
it's the kind of like it's like 20-minute drive from Sedona. It's in that area. Kind of hick town in the Verde Valley by Mingus Mountain and Jerome. It's like it's its own. It's got its own little kind of uniqueness there. But basically, we moved from Chicago. Driving Rivieras, upper middle class, them doing lots of cocaine, to basically losing everything, having a kind of an old wooden station wagon.
Did grandpa move with you all?
Nope. Nope. Yeah.
Stayed in Chicago.
Yeah. And I would
Okay.
say that move, and I didn't have language for it at the time, but like my being deeply
Yeah.
understood what was happening. Right. And I think when I was 12, had the experience of just the bottom dropping out, right? In ways that I couldn't comprehend. It was like an
Sure.
existential, right,
Sure. That makes so
drop.
much sense to me because I had an experience that I feel like I can relate very little, but I would imagine that if mom and dad are just now getting their shit together, you're feeling pretty unsafe because
Yeah,
constant grandpa is now not a part of your support system. Neither is your immediate surroundings, like all of the things that you relied on to feel safe because your
yeah,
parents have been chaotic
yeah,
and all of those things. I mean, I had addict parents too, so I know what that brings.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so no part of you could anchor into any level of safety.
yep.
So I
Oh,
can see
totally.
where
And I
like
would
just
I like,
exploding and
my
imploding.
nervous system would, like, just kind of
Yes, I was
wrap.
picturing
And
a
yeah,
very ADHD type reaction to it, where you're
yeah,
just fucking chaos and
yeah, yeah,
no anchor.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
totally. Yeah,
And you're
totally.
12?
Like 11, 12.
11,
Yeah,
12, okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So just coming into puberty, which is,
A
insane. It's
very
being insane
tumultuous age.
for
Yeah.
anybody.
Yes.
But what was interesting about that was, you're right, like, being even them being newly sober was a kind of unfamiliarity for everybody, right?
Mhm.
They got really involved in AA, um, in a deep way. That became the people that became their friends, right? And
Yeah.
they s in AA, used to talk about the only thing worse than like a wet alcoholic is a dry one,
Yeah.
right?
No, this is so funny because whenever you first talked about them getting sober, my immediate response was, okay, but did they lose any of the shit that made them run to the alcohol to begin with or whatever, cocaine, whatever? Like, were
Yeah,
they still codependent and have attachment and issues, trauma they didn't work through, you know?
yeah. Yeah, oh, totally. Oh, totally. And but what was really interesting for me, and this is something that actually ended up deeply shaping my life and kind of what I ended up doing and still do, right, is, I remember at that time I would have these kind of panic attacks, right? And I didn't have any words for them. I didn't know why, right? Uh,
Mhm.
my being did, but, like, my mind didn't. And, of course, my parents were completely the most dangerous people in the world to some part of me, right? So
Yeah.
it was humiliating. I remember feeling like humiliation and, like, I would just start crying and I didn't know what to say, right? And
Right,
all of
and
that
tough
stuff
boys
was
don't
for me.
cry.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and I remember a moment that they started being around people, right? In through AA meetings, right? And they had, I think, they were either having a meeting on our porch or just a group of people over. And this is right when we moved there. And I remember kind of walking around, and it was the first time I had ever heard a conversation that was remotely real. And it was something
Wow.
like this. It was something like, especially in the Midwest, right? In the
Yeah.
Midwest, go on vacation one time, I went back and I literally heard my aunt talk about her old, Kirby vacuum cleaner for 3 hours, right?
Thank you. Although I do think some of that is like marks the boomer generation in general, like for
Yeah,
real.
yep,
That's that one of the biggest struggles I have with the generation in general. I cannot fucking stand it. I cannot listen to you talk about the most mundane shit for 3 hours. So yes, but also I'm from Oklahoma. So, we're no one will accept us. We're not considered Midwest to most of the Midwest, and we're not considered
yeah,
South to most of the South. So, but there's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But yeah,
yeah,
I love that you can remember hearing
yeah,
something that felt authentic for the first time. And
yeah.
how did you feel hearing it, if you can remember?
Well, it was interesting because, yeah, up until that point, the only co the only thing I connected with conversation and dialogue was shooting the shit about mundane stuff or screaming, right? This was the first
Yeah.
time where people were talking about not stuff, right? Not who was right and wrong, but, like, how they felt about something, right? How they saw something, that they had a perspective, right?
Yeah.
And it was, and I remember I I got this feeling from it where something in me recognized a difference in that, and that there was something about the way that they were being and the way that they were talking was somehow addressing or connecting in some way to this bottom dropping out sensation that I was panicking over and didn't understand. And some part of me just felt that. And I just went in, sat down, joined the conversation, and I essentially haven't come out since, for all
Wow.
intents and purposes. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And
And did it
and then
help?
some, I think so. I mean, it really
Were
shaped
you
my
able to
life.
talk? Did they let you talk? Like, have a sharing turn?
Yeah, yeah. Yes. In fact, I got all those adults became my friends. And, one of the things that my grandfather really had a lot of was an enormous amount of wonder. Like, he traveled a lot. He was like one of the top amateur photographers in the world at the time. He collected everything, right? Like, he wasn't like, he didn't, he wasn't somebody that kind of like explicitly talked therapeutically or about their feelings, but the way he was a kind of a radical openness to the world, right? And he
Yeah.
really, I think, saw that in me and nurtured it, right? In a way that I'm only, as time goes on, I'm just appreciating more and more. Um, so there's a kind of a sense of wonder for me that's always been there. And there's also something about those deeper conversations is that they reveal kind of a dimension of, the things that are happening that, aren't obvious, but are most determinate of how we are and how we see things, right?
Yeah.
and that sense of invisibility, but profound, profound impact, right, is what's kind of determining things. All those things you can't see, but you kind of see with that. It, it's like those conversations touch that place, and it drew me in. And
Yeah.
I would say that, and I didn't understand this for a long time. I just thought I was just really lucky, right, to have a bunch of people throughout my life who just adults who just kind of basically took me under their wing and just poured themselves into me. And I used to think that, like, I for the longest time I never really understood my part in that, but I understand it now. I was like, "Oh, that wasn't random." They can they could hear my wonder, right? My interest, my listening. Um, they could hear me hearing that, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you walked into the meeting, you sat down,
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
I'm sure so much of them could see themselves in you. So what were your struggles through like adolescence, early adulthood?
Yeah, God. These are great questions. I mean, my struggle is that, like, I was unusually aware, right? I was unusually kind of had a lot of metacognition, right? I was aware that I was aware. I was meditating by the time I was 13, right? I was reading, self-help books, and I was having these deep conversations, and that's what I was interested in. But what that meant is I was also a teenager going through puberty with all of the insanity that it is to be a teenager. You are hormonally just nuts. And I don't know if I recommend being conscious during that time
Yeah,
because
no kidding. No kidding.
yeah. So, because it was being a teenager for me was really strange because there were two worlds. There was the world of high school. I was like really good at sports. I started lifting weights when I was 11 with my dad. I mean, I kind of was on one level was all the things that you were supposed to be, right? To be popular and to belong, right?
Mhm.
And I had all those instincts, right? All of those kind of social external desires and hormones and sex drives and like all of that and the mood swings that come with that. Yet I was kind of
Ooh.
self-aware at the time. And
Yeah.
I remember I would have my friends at school, and I was so aware of the game of it, the social game. So it had a kind of hollowness and emptiness, but I had this craving for it at the same time. And I could
Yes.
feel both of those things at once. A-
Yes.
and then I'd have my friends outside of school, which were mostly adults, and you know, we'd go on hikes and have these deep conversations and read philosophy books, and so it was a little bit schizophrenic being me, at that time.
I'm trying to imagine it, and
Yeah.
that does feel like a lot, especially okay, like, I don't know how you're gonna feel about me saying this, but
Mhm,
I believe in your level of awareness that you had at that time, and I believe in your level of consciousness, but I
mhm,
also know at that age you are still full of ego, and
mhm.
so
Yeah.
having to navigate, like, feeling like I know so much because you know more than everyone around you,
Mhm,
because I was 15
mhm.
and very clearly knew more than everyone around me,
Yeah.
but not knowing enough to understand some of the real human shit you're experiencing, it's like
Yeah.
the conscious part of you understands that world so much better than who you are as a human being because
Yeah.
it's so difficult to muddle through all of that, you know?
Yeah.
So, like,
Absolutely.
puberty and teenagehood and hormone swings, like, I can imagine that being very tumultuous.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, totally it was. It totally was. 'Cause there was kind of yeah, because I mean, so much about it being a teenager involves an obsession with how you're seen, right? But these 2 kind
Yes.
of conflicting you wanna be kind of there's this drive for autonomy that's 100% of your being, and there's a drive for belonging, which is also 100%
Yes.
of your being, right? And so
Did
much
you
of
feel shame that you can remember about your desire to want to belong?
yeah,
Because the
yeah,
conscious part of you?
yeah,
Yeah, me too. 'Cause,
yeah,
I remember being like, I'm above all this. These people don't have a single fucking clue what life is really about, right?
yeah,
But
totally.
desperate to be seen,
Yeah,
desperate to feel understood,
yeah,
desperate to be special and chosen. And then I'm
yeah,
like, you're not supposed to. And that's honestly, after like a real spiritual awakening and the whole journey, that's honestly like, there was a repeating pattern of that where I had to be like, we're human first. So
yeah,
whatever comes up, we're going to allow it. We're going to allow all of the dumb shit to be the dumb shit and not judge it anymore.
yeah, yeah,
But I can
totally.
see where that would be a struggle as a teenager.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it was strange because that very consciousness was the very thing that would make you uncool because no one understood it. So even
They're like,
that was a weird thing.
okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes, I can even imagine. Like, even just like, I'm just picturing you getting close to someone that you want to date and you're sharing this part of yourself and just it not being the most widely accepted philosophy of life, you know?
yeah, yeah, totally, totally. You know, it was kind of interesting too because not that long ago, I came across my high school yearbook.
Yeah.
Um, it was funny too because I was like, "Oh, this makes sense, because everything that everyone wrote in it was like so many people were like, "Yeah, you're like the one person that when you asked me how I was, actually wanted to know." Right? Like, there was this kind of sense of contactfulness that people could recognize, right, at some level,
Yeah.
you know, that that was there was an openness to me, right, and a
Yeah.
permeability to me that people actually did recognize, right,
Yeah.
reading those things back. But it was really, really, it was an existentially strange existence at that time,
Yeah. Yeah.
and with a lot of emotional ups and downs. Because at some level, I would hang out with my adult friends and have a really close relationship, but at the same time, another part of me they couldn't totally understand, or they couldn't
Right.
sit with me there, right? And then
Yes.
vice versa, right?
Well, and what I have found too with people who consider themselves to be fairly enlightened, they're not always emotionally available people. They don't know how. They don't recognize the fact that they are uncomfortable when they see somebody in pain in any
Yeah,
way,
yeah,
and as a recovering addict, they're gonna wanna rescue. That's the behavior that got them in trouble in the first place, but
yeah,
the way that that shows up is, like, kinda just dismissing your experience because,
yeah,
with some platitude, and I see this a lot in the spiritual community now too, where it's like, "Well, if you were, thinking about the right stuff or whatever, and it's like, okay, that's real helpful. Thank you so much. But that's one of the things that I really try to do is like anchor all of it together where it's like, no, there's a place for both, and you shouldn't be on either end of the pole all the time. And
yeah.
really just that alchemy is what we're after. But I could I could guess that a lot of the people that you were talking to,
Mhm.
they probably hadn't been able to integrate
Mhm.
a fair amount of the things they were ingesting, you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
those were the people I've been around, is like, we can talk all day and connect and flow and get all flowery in our philosophy, but,
yeah,
like, can I stop myself from screaming when I
yeah,
get upset?
yeah, yeah.
Can I sit with someone who's crying and
And they're
just
great.
hold the space
Yeah,
for it, you know?
yeah, yeah, totally, totally. And in some sense, everything that you're saying ended up being the thing that I actually found myself um, in some sense, creating, discovering a whole practice of doing that. When I graduated high school, the first thing I did is I went to a massage school in Tucson and became
Oh, cool. Okay.
went there, taught myself kind of like rolfing or structural integration, and um, which ended up being the thing that supported me to go to art school in San Francisco. I'd been doing
How
art my whole life. Yeah,
cool.
yeah, and that's what brought me to the city in San Francisco, and it was during that time. Now I had, at some level, my whole life was in this, since I was 11, even before that with my grandfather, had an orientation towards depth, right? Meaning,
Mhm.
explicitly. However, I had never, obviously I did not understand the Bay Area culture, which had a
Yeah.
whole other dimension to it, right? There were
Yeah, I
people that
bet.
were, the home of est and landmark education and workshops and, the whole 60s human potential movement, holotrophic breath, all this stuff, right? That that I really wasn't a part of growing up, but
Mhm.
but but all of a sudden I started being around meeting people that were deep, but also did psychedelics, right? And
Yeah.
having a conversation that in some senses were even more mysterious to me and touched on something that was even deeper.
Did
Um,
it scare you?
no, it intrigued me. It really intrigued me. Um,
Yeah.
it really intrigued me.
You liked the parts of them that they had kinda connected with
Yeah,
through those
yeah,
experiences? That's
yeah,
cool. Did
yeah.
you try any psychedelics?
Yeah, in fact, I would say I'm always surprised when I hears people, you know, taking acid or doing mushrooms. I'm like, "You mean there's still some left? I thought I did all of it." Yeah, there was a lot of experimentation at that
Yeah.
time. And it was something, I mean, I was in my, early 20s, and most of the people had been doing that since they were teenagers, and I had really not done any of that. And it was more than just the psychedelics themselves, it was the culture, right, of in some sense being interested in at a level of depth that I was interested in, become like really having a completely different view of it. And I had never done kinda like like a weekend course or anything like that. That was really
Yeah.
foreign to me. I was around a lot of people in 12-step world and all of that.
Yeah.
And then I met somebody, uh, who basically kind of talked me into doing something called the Sterling Men's Weekend, which was a really strange experience. But it was basically my first human potential movement context, and it it was interesting because it was through that I met somebody by the name of Jerry Candelaria, and being involved in that, because he did this weekend and he became part of the like the ongoing group, right, of men, helping to support the course, and there was a whole culture around it,
Yeah,
and
so you probably, like, met once a month or whatever after
yeah,
the weekend. Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
all of that, and Jerry had basically grew up in that culture, right? He had done a lot of different workshops. He had, he was almost on his way to become, he was almost had gotten to the point of being a landmark forum leader. He had all this experience, right?
Dang.
In what I kind of picture as Bay Area kind of human potential movement orientation, right? Um, and I would put it like this, when he met me and he heard me say stuff, he could recognize something that was really familiar to him, but
Mhm.
different. And he kinda like, he
He's
kind
like,
of
"Wait, what?"
recognized me, and I recognized him recognizing me, and I didn't know what he was exactly what he was recognized, but there was a friendship that started there,
Yeah.
and he introduced me to a bunch of people. He had started a number of courses, and he had kind of a like roughly a community of people around. Um, in fact, are you? You've probably heard of this. Uh, you've heard of the whole one taste thing, right? The woman that just got prosecuted for sex trafficking. Um, she wrote the I think the multi-orgasmic person. She
No, I
basically
haven't
like
heard about this.
yeah, Bord no, not Bordeaux. Nicole Didone. Um, anyway, she ended up like being, on the cover of the New York Times and all this kind of stuff, and she was just prosecuted. She had created what ended up being kind of a sex cult
Oh,
in this
shit.
world. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, she was part of Jerry's community, and I knew her, and like I'm watching documentaries on the show, and I'm like, I know that person, I know that
A
person, I know that
sex
person, right?
cult?
Like, yeah, it was
Wow.
this.
There's a little
So
bit of
it was
everything out there in there.
yeah, there was a lot of like there's a lot of shadows in that world, right? Um,
Yeah.
and a lot of I think young people just experimenting and getting sucked into vortexes that end up being very unwise.
Yes.
Right.
This is
Um,
why if there's gonna be gurus, they better be preaching to you about how you need to trust yourself more than you trust anybody else on
yeah,
this planet.
yeah,
Because if they're like, "I'm the way, the truth, and the light," run, because 'cause
yeah.
they're not.
Totally, totally. And I think actually Nicole was kind of this was part of it, I would imagine for Nicole and for a lot of people is I think a lot of people who end up becoming kind of weird cult leaders, they don't start off with that intention.
No!
Yeah. Like kind of, you know, being in that world and like kind of being, facilitating courses and having an organization and all this kind of stuff. The thing I've really come to appreciate is people will transfer onto you,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
they'll actually want to give themselves up,
They
right?
wanna
I think it's
relinquish
a
the
deeply
power to you.
religious impulse, right? It's a
Yes.
deeply
Yes.
religious impulse, right? But there's
100%. They want something to believe in and
yeah,
something that makes them feel less afraid. Like, you
yeah,
become the anchor. Yeah.
yeah,
I would say, like, I say this a lot actually, that I have to be really careful because I have the potential to be a cult leader. And
yeah,
so, like, I'm
yeah,
so careful about shit because I'm like,
yeah,
no, when I talk, people listen, and that is a great responsibility. I have to
yeah,
take that seriously.
yeah, totally, totally. I mean, we could talk a lot about that, but I could tell like if you know, I just don't have the temperament to be a cult leader. I'm like,
Oh, no,
I'm
man,
too
I'd be
introverted,
like, I'd
right?
start to get, like, real agitated real quick, like, "Brother,
Yeah,
go fucking do something for yourself for a minute.
yeah,
Shit.
yeah,
Read the book
yeah,
again. I don't know what to tell you. I'll see you next week."
yeah, yeah. So it just yeah, that would always make me when people would like kind of idolize. I would just feel there was some. There's a. It's funny. I could feel how people could get hooked on that. There's a certain kind of like euphoria that can kind of come with that.
Oh,
I have some compassion
absolutely.
for people because it's like they weren't intending to do that, but then you have people respond to you that way and you don't quite notice it, and then you find yourself in this relationship and literally like I think a cult leader is co-created, right? Because
Absolutely. I agree with
yeah,
that. I've never
yeah,
considered it, but I 100% agree with that
yeah,
because Well, first of all, especially in this realm, when you're tapping into that higher self energy, especially with the use of psychedelics or, other drugs,
Oh, yeah.
there the euphoria alone in that is great.
Yeah.
But then you have this prophecy that you want to share with others and this love and this la la la. And you're feeling
Yeah.
so good with every word spoken, and they're feeling so good with every word received. And there's this whole little thing of synergy happening. Shit, who would want to leave that bubble, you know? And who
Yeah.
doesn't want to
Yeah.
be worshiped for at least 5 minutes of their life? Come on.
Yeah, totally.
Maybe it's my
And
Leo
there's
moon app, but every now and
yeah,
then the idea of,
yeah,
"Hey, what's up?"
absolutely. Totally, totally. And I think my friend and colleague John Vervaeke, who's a cognitive scientist and philosopher, who is actually becoming quite famous for his work on what he calls the meaning crisis. And he is really, really articulated in ways that I don't think anyone else really has in quite the detail that he does. That as for a lot of people, religion is something that's really become unviable, but us being
Mhm.
religious, like, I don't think is an option, right? This sense of being
Right.
oriented to something higher. So if you lose the history, the lineage, the ritual, like, the the you know, deep framework of that appropriately binds you to what is higher and what is lower, whatever the religion is. If that starts to disappear, but we still have our nervous systems are oriented to orienting through that, what
Right.
takes the place of that are some really strange things. And you can see some of the, strange euphoria around, as psychedelics have become something more mainstream. On one level, that's really
Yeah.
cool because it's like being researched and they're seeing all the benefits of it. And to me, that's like
Yeah.
obvious. But there's also a whole other side, which is this kind of euphoric culture around it, right? And I
Yeah.
think,
You have
and I
to
think there's
stay
been a lot
anchored
of,
in
yeah,
your
yeah,
humanity, man.
yeah,
That's the thing. For a while, I was really consuming a lot of spiritual content because I was raised very religious and was a very practicing
yeah,
religious person for quite some time. And then in adulthood, later adulthood, just started like slowly. It wasn't like one decision. I just kind of quit going to church. And then the further I got separated, the less it made sense. And then other things made more sense and had a spiritual awakening. And so I was really digesting a lot of content because I was like desperate for probably for something that felt like I could 100% sink my teeth in, but, like, just some safety in the belief system,
yeah,
and I have come across a lot of people that I have to be careful about the spiritual people I let on here. I don't do 100% great job of vetting that they can have a real emotional
yeah.
conversation, I like the best conversations that intersect between psychology and
Yeah.
spirituality
Yeah.
because there's
Yeah.
grounding in that,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I
Totally.
don't always get it right, but I try really hard because for whatever reason, my audience doesn't connect with the super ungrounded,
Mhm.
euphoric, "La, la,
Yeah.
la, 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 we just have to
Yeah.
hold hands and whatever,"
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
don't either. I
Yeah.
always wanna bring it back down. I mean, yeah, I could sit around, take an edible, and have a great time in
Yeah.
the little world of euphoria and philosophy, but that's not what helps me
Yeah.
integrate that learning and not
Yeah.
scream at people
Yeah.
and not
Yeah.
be in a deep, dark depression. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
real
Oh,
life shit happens 5 minutes after that high is over, and I
yeah.
have to know how to deal with that. And that's what I want my audience to know too, you
Right.
know?
Right. Oh, totally. Well, I think the thing I'm appreciating about what you're saying is, yeah, there's because when the rubber meets the road in your relationships, and this is the thing that circling actually circling is the practice that kind of formed, out of my relationship with Jerry and the people that we were hanging out with at the time. There was this real conversation that kept happening. that no one would ever plan on, but it kept happening between us. And at some point, we were like, "What is this thing that keeps happening?" And it was some combination of like, it would oftentimes it would start where like there'd be tension between a couple of people, and we would get interested in it. And they'd start talking about the conflict, and at a certain point, like that conflict would leave the level of the conflict, and someone would get really, really honest, and that honestly opened up to like a whole other thing that revealed that person and the person listening, and then and that would lead to these kind of personal epiphanies, but
Yeah.
also these relational kind of almost revelatory experiences about life. And we kept experiencing this. And Jerry and I particularly were like, what is this thing that keeps happening? And I would put it like this: if I were to kind of recreate it in my language, it'd be something like, if I could say it at the time, which I don't think I could say it like this, it was something like this: there's something deep and profound about what we keep stumbling into that's distinct from all the other deep and profound stuff we were into at the time. This is mid late 90s in that period of time. And so Jerry and I in particular really started just looking at it, getting interested in it. What is this? And that question in some sense brought it out more, and it brought us out more in the process. And so we ended up you know getting together with our friends and then trying to do it on purpose, whatever this thing was. And at some point, it
Yeah.
got a name called circling. And then we started to realize like, there is something really kind of real here going on. And here's the important thing to get about it for me and my experience was like, it wasn't like anyone was like, hey, let's start a thing. I
Yeah.
got this idea. You know, it was not like that at all. It was like we found ourselves encountering an experience, a relational experience that we didn't have words for. And now I would say the only like linguistic, hands that we had at the time was kind of like human potential movement language, self help language, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that could pick up a lot of it. But for me, it didn't pick up the essence of it, and that bugged me in a in a really deep way, in the sense of there's something wondrous about it, perplexing about it for me. And that drew me into it, and that involvement and other people started coming into it, and then it just kind of formed into something that we had a name, and we started doing these courses up at Harbin Hot Springs, and that turned into us doing courses every weekend or every other weekend, every 6 weeks or so. And there'd be like a community that formed around it. And that led to like a whole world.
That's
And
so cool.
yeah, it's really interesting. It was really interesting. And it took me a long time to understand what that world was. And there's something still mysterious about it for me. Cause I keep learning from it. But it's the thing that you're talking about, right? This sense of being really real with other
Yeah.
human beings. Not this, the term is like this, not a spiritual bypassing, not just wallowing in processing, but this kind of
Right.
thing that can happen with human beings where it's like I really feel this way. How a little baby becomes a person is in and through other people. It's
Yes.
this reciprocal, awkward, coordinated, intersubjective, dance relationship that is how we come to find out that we are, and how
Yeah.
those relationships we continue to become people in and through other people. But the thing I didn't realize at the time and couldn't quite see was this was all happening right at the beginning of the internet boom.
Oh, yeah.
And I think one of the things that the internet did that I don't hear a whole lot of people really talking about is, up until kind of the internet, I would say the uh, the voicemail or the, initially the voicemail machines with the old tapes was my first recollection of this happening. Is for the first time where if you had to have a two-way exchange information both ways, you at least had to talk on the phone. Like, there was
Ah,
two-way communication was always coupled with this strange, awkward, ambiguously filled thing called conversation, relationship.
yeah.
You uncollapse that and you make the relation separate from the communication. You uncollapse those two things. And relationships are just like human beings are scary. They've always been terrifying.
Yeah, yeah.
Like if I became your roommate, you would find snakes in my garden that if I knew about them, I probably wouldn't tell you about them, and vice versa. Human beings they're great because they're human beings, but they're also human beings. So we have an appropriate amount of terror that comes up with other people. So if you make
Yeah.
that optional and you just can send a text, send an email, and like now I have identities out on the internet kind of having conversations that I may or may not find out about. I don't even know what to make of that. Um,
Right.
and circling really became a kind of yoga for inner subjectivity, like a kind of meditation practice, a meditation, making relationship having a conscious kind of practice, almost like a gym or a yoga or something like that. And it took me a long time to understand how did the hell did that just spread all over the world? And I always tried to understand that by like looking at the methodology or something. And then I realized, oh, as the internet formed, I started to realize like, oh, this is actually circling was in some sense an anticipation to and a response to this 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 missing that is now so prevalent. So now we're at the point where, in 1840, the average person spent 8 hours a day with other people, just under 8 hours a day. And then you look at this graph that goes down and you get to
Wow.
today, and the average 25-year-old American male spends, I think, under 30 minutes a day in actual dialogical synchronistic like
That's sad.
proximity to other people. Now, when you think about that you and I became the people we are in and through this I thou relationship, you
Mhm.
now we're talking about like what kind of selves do we have now? I think the
And I think it's the selves full of all that internal dialogue
yeah,
that you have nowhere to go with.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's just there circling inside of you. And
yeah,
shame is compounding and,
yeah,
blame is like that's what I really think.
yeah, totally. So in this strange way, I what I've realized that what I'm starting to realize, I don't even know if I can comprehend this totally. But what I'm starting to intimate is that there's something happening to relationships that was similar to what happened after the industrial revolution to our relationships with our body.
Mm,
Before before industry, before factories, before machines, life was hard. Like you had to ride horses and get on saddles and, if you had to go to the bathroom, you had to dig a hole. Like life had lots of effort coupled with it.
mhm.
The machines actually kind of brought everything to a small circle in front of us. And all of a sudden, our body, which just was in the background, became something that we had to deal with in the foreground. Like everybody started having health conditions because they didn't move anymore. And so out of that, like our health and our fitness became something we had to consciously become concerned about. And we created these weird thing called gyms that concentrated energy that we pay money for to go in and move, which is strange to think of that way, but that's actually what it is.
Right,
And I think something
right.
similar is happening with relationships, where relationships are no longer just given in the facticity of our lives. There's something that we actually have to be concerned about take on because so much the necessity of it has been related, but it's so
Mhm.
important, just like health is. And I think that that's actually what circling as a practice really was addressing and paying attention to. Um, and so when you talk about, whoa, I start just having these conversation with people, and then my whole orientation changes to what who I am and what I'm about, and like all of that. That makes total sense to me. That makes
Yeah.
total sense to me.
Okay, Guy, I'm running behind for a client. I've
Oh, okay.
loved having you. I'd love to have you back. Tell us where we can find you.
Yes, you can at my institute is thecirclinginstitute.com, and I'll email you all this too.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll
if
make
you're
sure to include all of it in
yeah.
the show notes.
Yeah, yeah, and there's self-study courses and live courses that we do, and I'll give you all that information. Yeah, and then if you wanna contact me directly, just guysengstock@gmail.com.
Okay, perfect. I'll make sure to include that. Thank you
Yeah,
so
I'd
much.
love to
I've
talk
loved
with
this
you again.
conversation.
Yeah,
For
really
sure.
nice
I'm
to meet
serious.
you. Yeah.
Hold on, I'm gonna press stop real quick. Thanks for coming to Emotionally Unavailable. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, and share. Emotionally